On May the 22nd, 1979, the Canadian voters were again summoned to the polls, and that time the Liberals were already fairly unpopular with the electorate, although it was surprising that they still won a plurality of the popular vote with 40.1% compared to the Progressive Conservatives' 35.9%. Yet they won fewer seats because the Progressive Conservatives were so strong in Ontario, Canada's most populous province, and in the Western Canadian provinces where the Liberals were almost decimated. In Quebec, the Liberals were very strong, taking 67 seats out of 75. The dying Créditiste or Social Credit Party took 6 seats, and the Progressive Conservatives just 2 seats. By comparison or contrast, the Liberals won a total of just 2 seats in the Western provinces, and the Progressive Conservatives swept, in addition to most of the Western provinces, also Ontario. Joe Clark therefore became Prime Minister on June the 4th, 1979, one day before turning 40. He was rather serious and polite in conversation. Some people actually thought that he wasn't nasty enough to succeed politically. He regarded Canada as a community of communities, recalling his Alberta hometown's friendly atmosphere. In contrast to the academic, rather arrogant Trudeau, Clark appeared to be, and I'm quoting here from Jim Lotsey's book, The Prime Ministers of Canada, that covered them until 1987, appeared to be someone who was studying all the time, unsure of the answers that were given to him. And he also spoke, like his predecessor Stanfield, fairly slowly and seriously, and using rather formal vocabulary in contrast to Trudeau. The New Democrats received 26 seats. The Progressive Conservatives took 136 seats, the Liberals 114 seats. Several members of Trudeau's cabinet were defeated, although he was able to keep his seat. It took Clark 4 months to recall the Parliament from its summer recess in early October. During that time, the Progressive Conservatives had already lost one of their members. The aged former Prime Minister John Diefenbaker had died of a heart attack in Ottawa while working on some speech or speeches for the upcoming parliamentary session in August 1979. He was 83 when he passed away. The Progressive Conservatives actually lost Diefenbaker's seat in the ensuing by-election, but they were able to persuade one social creditor or creditiste to join them in order to retain the 136 seats. One of Clark's relatively few wise decisions during his brief prime ministership was to allow the Liberal Speaker or Chairperson of the House of Commons to remain in office, so that all the 136 members of the Progressive Conservative Caucus or parliamentary group would be there on the floor to vote. Already in October 1979, Clark's government faced a non-confidence motion, but it was able to defeat it. However, in early December 1979, when the sharp-tongued finance minister John Crosbie introduced the government's first budget, promising long-term gain for short-term pain, or short-term pain for long-term gain, and including a sharp increase, 18 cents a gallon increase in the gasoline tax. A New Democratic backbencher member of the House of Commons, Bob Rae, who would later serve as the Ontario Premier in the early 1990s and would then eventually join the Liberal Party, introduced a non-confidence motion which his fellow New Democrats and Liberals supported. And to make matters worse, not only did he refuse to compromise on the budget, which would have at least given him reprieve until early 1980 in terms of continuing as prime minister before his eventual parliamentary defeat. Joe Clark also did not ensure that even all of the conservatives, progressive conservatives, were present because one cabinet minister was in Europe, another member was in New Zealand, and one was sick in the hospital, while several sick liberals were brought, some of them even by ambulance, to the House of Commons. Only one liberal was absent. So when all was said and done, on December 13th, 1979, the Progressive Conservatives lost the House of Commons' confidence by a vote of 139 to 133. The 5 social creditors abstained from the vote, but even if all of them had voted for the Progressive Conservatives, they would still have lost that confidence vote by 1 vote. On December the 14th, 1979, Clark then formally advised the Governor General to call a new federal election for February 1980 and announced the Parliament's dissolution. So let's look at this election more closely now. So it took place on May the 22nd, 1979. The number of parliamentarians in the House of Commons had been raised to 282. The turnout rose clearly to 75.7%, and indeed the Progressive Conservatives took 35.9% of the vote, or about 4,112,000 votes and 136 seats. The Liberals, despite losing about 3% of the popular vote share, still dominated the popular vote with 40.1% and about 4,595,000 votes, but only received 114 seats. The New Democrats, under their new leader, Ed Broadbent, took 17.9% of the popular vote, or 2,049,000 votes and 26 seats, and then Fabien Roy led the Créditistes to defeat with 4.6% of the vote, or 528,000 votes and just 6 seats. This was one of the briefest Canadian parliaments.